The fluorescent lights of Courtroom 3B hummed with a sterile indifference, casting a harsh glare on the proceedings. Every creak of the polished oak benches, every rustle of paper, seemed amplified in the tense silence. Before the bench stood Sergeant Major Kairos Thorne, a man whose very presence once commanded respect and fear in equal measure. Today, however, he was reduced to a defendant. His once imposing frame slightly stooped. His piercing blue eye, accustomed to scanning distant horizons for threats, now fixed on the scuffed linoleum floor. He was a Marine sniper, a legend whispered about in hushed tones among the elite echelons of special operations. They called him ghosts, a testament to his uncanny ability to appear and disappear, to strike with surgical precision from impossible distances. His record was spotless, his commendations numerous, his loyalty to cause and country unwavering. Yet, here he was, accused of a crime that defied his very nature, the unauthorized discharge of a firearm, resulting in significant property damage and endangering civilians. The prosecution painted a picture of recklessness, of a highly trained killer losing control. The judge, a stern woman named Eleanor Vance, cleared her throat. "Sergeant Major Thorne," she began, her voice devoid of emotion, "the evidence presented by the prosecution is compelling. While your service record is exemplary, the law must be applied equally to all. Based on the testimony and exhibits, I find sufficient cause to order you held without bail, pending further investigation and formal charges." A collective gasp rippled through the small public gallery. Thorne's lawyer, a young, earnest public defender named Sarah Jenkins, sprang to her feet. "Your Honor, with all due respect, Sergeant Major Thorne is a decorated veteran, not a flight risk. He has no prior record, and his actions, while regrettable, were complex. We request bail be set." Judge Vance held up a hand. "Ms. Jenkins, the nature of the alleged incident, involving a high-powered rifle in a densely populated area, necessitates this decision. Sergeant Major Thorne, you will be remanded into custody." Two uniformed officers, who had been standing at the ready, moved forward. One produced a pair of handcuffs, their cold steel glinting under the unflinching lights. Thorne offered no resistance. His face remained impassive, a mask forged by years of discipline and controlled emotion. He turned his back to the court, extending his wrists. The click of the cuffs echoed like a gunshot in the suddenly silent room. As the officers began to lead him away, a low murmur started to build. Thorne's few supporters, a handful of grizzled veterans from his old unit, their faces etched with disbelief and anger, shifted uneasily. They knew ghosts. They knew he didn't make mistakes. Not like this. The incident had occurred 3 weeks prior, on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday afternoon. A high-rise building in downtown, bustling with offices and apartments, had become the unlikely target of a single, precise shot from a .50 caliber sniper rifle. The bullet had ripped through a specific window on the 27th floor, causing a cascade of shattered glass and structural damage before embedding itself deep within a reinforced concrete pillar. Miraculously, no one had been physically harmed, but the sheer audacity and power of the act had sent shockwaves through the city. The investigation was swift. Ballistics matched the bullet to a rifle registered to Kairos Thorne. His alibi was flimsy, almost non-existent. He claimed he was on a private matter, refusing to elaborate. He had been found near the scene, packing up his gear, looking as calm as if he'd just finished a day at the range. When questioned, he admitted to firing the shot, but offered no explanation, no justification, no apology. His silence, coupled with the overwhelming evidence, made him an open and shut case for the prosecution. But Kairos Thorne's silence wasn't born of guilt. It was born of a different kind of burden, one he had carried for years, one that stretched back to the scorching sands of a forgotten desert, to a mission that had been classified at the highest levels. It was 2018, and Sergeant Major Thorne was deployed to a remote, volatile region of the Middle East. His team, a small, highly specialized unit, was tasked with a critical clandestine operation, the extraction of a high-value asset, a brilliant scientist named Dr. Aris, who possessed vital intelligence on a new devastating biological weapon being developed by a rogue terrorist cell. The extraction was going sideways. Dr. Al-Hamid, under heavy guard, was being moved through a crowded marketplace, a human shield of innocent civilians making a direct assault impossible. Thorne, positioned on a rooftop nearly a mile away, had the impossible task of creating a diversion, a window of opportunity, without causing collateral damage. His spotter, Corporal Lena Petrova, her face grim, whispered into the comms, "Ghost. They're moving him into the blue van. We're losing the window. Too many civilians." Thorne's eye was glued to the scope of his M107. He saw the blue van, the scientists being roughly shoved inside, the throngs of people, the armed guards. He saw the impossible. Negative. Lena Thorne's voice was calm, almost detached. "There's a hairline fracture on the rear axle of that van, just above the left wheel well. It's barely visible. If I can hit that precisely, it might disable the vehicle without causing a catastrophic explosion or injuring the crowd." Lena's breath hitched. "Ghosts. That's a fraction of an inch target. At this range, with that wind, it's impossible." "Impossible is where we live," Lena Thorne replied, his finger already caressing the trigger. He factored in wind speed, humidity, Coriolis effect, even the imperceptible wobble of the building beneath him. He held his breath, his world narrowing to the crosshairs, the tiny, almost invisible flaw on the van's axle. He fired. The .50 caliber round screamed through the air. It struck the exact point Thorne had aimed for. The van lurched violently, its rear axle snapping, sending it skidding sideways, blocking the narrow street. The guards, disoriented, scrambled out, creating the precise chaos needed. Thorne's team, moving like shadows, swept in, extracted Dr. Al-Hamid, and vanished into the labyrinthine alleys. The mission was a success. The biological weapon plot was foiled, lives were saved, but the official report, for security reasons, simply stated that the van had been disabled by an unforeseen mechanical failure. Thorne's impossible shot, the act of genius that saved the day, remained classified, a ghost in the machine. He had been commended, privately, by the highest echelons, but the details were buried under layers of secrecy. Years passed. Thorne continued his service, his reputation growing, but the weight of that unacknowledged act, the burden of knowing what he had done and why, settled deep within him. He never spoke of it. It was just another ghost he carried. Now, in the sterile confines of the courtroom, the ghost had returned to haunt him. The prosecution's case was built on the premise that Thorne had fired a high-powered rifle into a building for no discernible reason. They argued it was a dangerous display of arrogance, a man believing himself above the law. The target of his recent shot, the 27th floor window, belonged to a seemingly innocuous import-export business. The owner, a nervous man named Mr. Henderson, testified that he had no idea why his office had been targeted. He spoke of the terror, the shattered glass, the near. Sarah Jenkins, Thorne's lawyer, tried desperately to introduce his distinguished service record to suggest a deeper motive, but Judge Vance consistently ruled it irrelevant to the specific charge. "Ms. Jenkins, we are here to discuss the incident on October 17th, not Sergeant Major Thorne's military career, however commendable it may be." Thorne, for his part, remained stoic. He refused to explain himself, even to Sarah. It was necessary, he'd told her, his voice flat. "That's all you need to know." His silence was a wall, impenetrable, frustrating. Sarah knew there was more, but without his cooperation, she was fighting blind. The prosecution's closing argument was scathing. Sergeant Major Thorne, a man trained to kill, used his skills to cause wanton destruction. He offers no explanation, no remorse. He believes his past service grants him impunity. This court cannot allow such a dangerous precedent. As the prosecutor concluded, the courtroom felt heavy with an unspoken verdict. The judge's decision to remand Thorne without bail seemed a foregone conclusion. The click of the handcuffs had sealed his fate. The two officers began to lead Thorne out, their footsteps echoing on the marble floor. He didn't look back at Sarah or at his old comrades. His gaze was distant, as if already contemplating the confines of a cell. Just as they reached the double doors at the back of the courtroom, a sudden commotion erupted. The doors swung open with a resounding thud, revealing a figure who commanded instant, absolute attention. He was a man of towering presence, his uniform a pristine canvas of dark blue adorned with 4 gleaming silver stars on each shoulder. General Marcus Barnes, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, one of the most powerful military figures in the world, stood framed in the doorway. His face, usually a study in stern resolve, was etched with a rare blend of urgency and profound regret. A collective gasp swept through the courtroom, louder than any before. Reporters scrambled, their pens flying, their cameras flashing. Even Judge Vance, who shared a surname but no known relation, seemed momentarily stunned, her gavel hovering midair. General Vance strode purposefully into the room, his boots clicking rhythmically on the floor. He ignored the stunned bailiffs, the gaping spectators, the bewildered prosecutor. His eyes, sharp and focused, locked onto Kairos Thorne, who had paused, the handcuffs still on his wrists. His head turned slightly. The 2 officers holding Thorne instinctively released their grip, stepping back, their faces a mixture of awe and confusion. General Vance stopped directly in front of Thorne. The 4 stars on his shoulders seemed to gleam, radiating an almost palpable authority. He looked at the handcuffs, then at Thorne's impassive face. Then, in a gesture that stunned everyone, General Vance slowly, deliberately, raised his right hand to his brow. His salute was crisp, perfect, a silent acknowledgement of a bond that transcended rank and circumstance. It was a salute of profound respect, of a debt owed, of an apology unspoken but deeply felt. The courtroom was utterly silent. The air crackled with anticipation. Kairos Thorne, the ghost, the man who never showed emotion, felt a tremor run through him. His eyes, for the first time in weeks, softened, a flicker of something akin to surprise, then understanding passing through them. He did not salute back. He simply held the general's gaze, a silent conversation passing between them. General Vance held the salute for a long moment, then slowly lowered his hand. He turned to face Judge Vance, his voice, when he spoke, resonating with a quiet power that filled every corner of the room. "Your Honor," he began, his voice steady, "I apologize for this unorthodox interruption, but what is transpiring here is a grave miscarriage of justice, one that I, and indeed the entire United States Marine Corps, bear responsibility for." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the bewildered faces in the gallery. "Sergeant Major Kairos Thorne," he continued, his voice gaining strength, "is not a reckless criminal. He is a national hero, and the incident for which he is being unjustly held is a direct consequence of a highly classified operation, the details of which I am now authorized to reveal." A ripple of murmurs spread through the courtroom. Judge Vance, regaining her composure, leaned forward. "General Vance, are you suggesting that Sergeant Major Thorne's actions were part of an authorized military operation?" "Precisely, Your Honor," the general affirmed. 3 weeks ago, our intelligence agencies received credible, time-sensitive information about a sophisticated cyber-attack being launched from a specific location within this city. This attack, if successful, would have crippled critical national infrastructure, including our air traffic control systems, power grids, and emergency services. It would have caused widespread chaos and potentially millions of casualties. He gestured towards the prosecutor, then to the shattered window. The source of this attack was traced to a highly secured server located in an office on the 27th floor of the building in question. Standard law enforcement protocols would have taken hours, if not days, to secure the necessary warrants and breach the facility. Time we did not have. General Vance's eyes met Thorne's. Sergeant Major Thorne was deployed to neutralize the threat. His mission was to disable that server, which was housed behind a reinforced, bulletproof window, without alerting the perpetrators or causing any civilian casualties. The only way to achieve this was a single, precise shot from a .50 caliber rifle, targeting a specific, vulnerable component within the server itself. He looked back at the judge. "The property damage, Your Honor, was a necessary consequence of preventing a national catastrophe. The bullet, as you know, did not deviate from its intended path. It struck the server, disabling the attack, and then embedded itself in a structural pillar, precisely as planned, to prevent any further collateral damage." The courtroom was silent, save for the frantic scribbling of reporters, The prosecutor's face had gone pale. Sarah Jenkins stared at Thorne, a mixture of shock and profound relief washing over her. Thorne, for his part, remained expressionless, as if this was merely another debrief. Sergeant Major Thorne, General Vance continued, his voice heavy with regret, was under strict orders not to disclose the nature of his mission. National security protocols dictated his silence. He bore the burden of public condemnation, of being labeled a criminal, to protect classified information that could compromise ongoing operations and intelligence sources. He chose honor over personal vindication. He then turned back to Thorne, his gaze unwavering. Sergeant Major Thorne, on behalf of the United States Marine Corps, and indeed on behalf of a grateful nation, I apologize. I apologize for the position we placed you in. I apologize for the injustice you have suffered, and I apologize for not being able to speak sooner. With that, General Vance extended his hand. Sergeant Major, your handcuffs are a disgrace to your service. One of the officers, still stunned, fumbled for the key. The click of the cuffs unlocking was almost louder than their initial Thorne rubbed his wrists, then slowly, deliberately, grasped the general's outstretched hand. It was a firm, silent handshake, a bond reaffirmed. Judge Vance, her face now a steady and profound contemplation, cleared her throat. In light of this extraordinary testimony and the compelling evidence presented by General Vance, I hereby order Sergeant Major Thorne's immediate release. All charges are dismissed with prejudice. She brought her gavel down with a decisive thud. Case dismissed. A wave of applause, hesitant at first, then roaring, erupted from the public gallery. Thorne's veteran comrades surged forward, their faces alight with pride and relief. Sarah Jenkins, tears streaming down her face, embraced him fiercely. Kairos Thorne, the ghost, stood amidst the clamor, his face still largely impassive, but a subtle change had occurred. The distant look in his eyes had vanished, replaced by a quiet presence, a sense of burden lifted. He was no longer just a defendant, a man accused. He was a Marine, a hero, his honor not just restored, but publicly, unequivocally affirmed. As he walked out of the courtroom, flanked by General Vance and his jubilant comrades, the cameras flashed, the reporters shouted questions, but Thorne remained silent. He had done his duty, carried his burden, and now, finally, he was free. The apology from a four-star general wasn't just a legal formality, it was a profound act of recognition, a testament to the unseen sacrifices made by those who serve in the shadows, and a reminder that true justice sometimes requires the highest levels of courage and integrity to prevail.